Well, hello everyone. Welcome to another edition of One Plus One, your place for inconvenient truth telling and myth busting. It's another of our All Things Africa edition, and I can't believe it, but we've reached the final destination in our Africa history and current affairs tour. We've come to the last of the six island nations, and the last country we will explore its history and its current affairs. And again, our final chapter in this epic series is the nation of Madagascar, which I actually would love to visit and meet some lemurs and and who better to teach us about this nation or any African
Okay.
nation than our historical guide, our tour guide, our longtime contributor to One Plus One, our returning champion and veteran truth teller and mythbuster, Abayomi Azikiwe of Pan-African Newswire and Black Agenda Reports. Abayomi, as everyone should know by now, is a longtime historian, journalist, longtime leftist activist, and Pan-Africanist leftist who does many solidarity work with Africa, political education work, history education work, and more, and other nations targeted by imperialism. And of course, don't forget, folks, to share widely. One plus one. Facebook sometimes blocks me from sharing, or it shadow bans me, so it's deeply appreciated. Folks, share widely. It's our only way of growing an audience and overcoming the dominance of corporate media and Western state media and the avalanche of far right media. So again, please share it widely. And please donate at PayPal. If you want to donate another way, then get in touch at Youri at Gmail. And please do help our dear friend Chris Richards, the eclectic radical facing unemployment, by supporting him at Patreon, his Substack, and share his content widely. And now on to the topic at hand. So, Abayomi, as always, tell us what was. Oh, and also, apology in advance, folks. As everybody should know by now, I am unfortunately a Yankee who sucks at pronouncing foreign countries' names and so forth. So I apologize in advance, but that's why we have Abayomi here to correct us. So, as always, Abayomi, tell us, what was Madagascar like before French colonization? How did it become a colony of France? And what were the conditions like for the people when France ruled over them? Oh, 1 second, folks. Uh, 1 second, folks. We're having some internet problems. Okay, I believe we have Abayomi back. Yes. We have
Yeah,
Abayomi.
you're kind of frozen though. Yeah, okay, I see you now. Yeah.
Okay, apologies.
Well, you're gonna have your work cut out for this one.
Yes, exactly.
I see. In terms of pronunciations, you'll have your work cut out for this one.
Exactly. So, as always, Abayomi, tell us, what was Madagascar like before French colonization? How did it become a colony of France? And what were the conditions like for the people when France ruled over them directly?
Yes, Madagascar is considered to have a very long history. Um, According to archaeologists and geologists, they were once connected to both Africa as well as Asia through the geological theory of Botswana, which states that Asia and Africa, North America, and South America were at one point united as one large landmass. But this can be traced back anytime between 90 and 180 million years ago. So that's a long time before the situation changed and these landmass broke up. Madagascar is inhabited by a very diverse population of ethnic groups and races. In the early phase of the island, it was thought that a lot of the people there came there from places such as South Borneo, Java, India, as well as the African continent.
Well, that
So it
explains
has
a
a
lot.
very diverse
Yeah.
the diverse population. There's a lot of mixture of traditional African societies, um, Asia Pacific societies. Also, there was the intervention of Arab Muslims in later years during this so-called Christian era. But prior to that, there were civilizations that developed inside of Madagascar. For example, the Razi Kaji civilization is one of the earliest. There was human settlements. There's been discoveries of a necropolis, which is a funeral or burial site on Madagascar that goes back centuries. Also, there was the discovery of various tools that were utilized in the development of the societies and civilizations in Madagascar. And during the 19th and 20th century, there was a lot of excavation and archaeological work that was done. Yet there's sharp disagreements over the overall evolution of Madagascar, its people, its civilization, and also its political makeup. Now, in the 15th century, there was the intervention of the Portuguese, who came as traders and explorers, and they attempted to set up settlements there, but it really was not successful. In later years, the British attempted to set up a outpost for British colonialism on Madagascar. Nonetheless, eventually it was the French who were able to gain dominance on the island of Madagascar. And this took place as a result of initially trading, sending in missionaries to make deals and to set up cooperation agreements with the indigenous people there. Nonetheless, it became extremely hostile as the 19th century moved on, and France declared Madagascar a colony of itself during the latter years of the 19th century. So this is how colonialism came there. Uh, Between 1895 and 1896, the area was declared a colony of France. And two of the monarchies that existed there were run by women. So you had both kingdoms as well as queendoms in Madagascar even during as late as the 19th century. So that gives you some historical background to the country. You had tremendous resistance to French colonialism in Madagascar. I mean, there were several wars, rebellions in the 1890s. In 1897, there was an uprising, even though the country had been declared a French colony. People were still fighting for their independence.
And tell us more about what were the conditions like of the people of Madagascar under French colonialism.
Highly repressive, exploitative. They set up cash crop economies, and it was highly repressive on the part of the French political establishment and the French military. They had set up these economies where people were forced to work in the fields to produce crops and also to pay taxes to the French. And this was during the 1890s, going into the 20th century. There was more unrest inside the country. And of course, there were uprisings that took place during World War One, huge uprisings by the Malagasy people against French domination. And this continued even during the 1930s and going into World War II. There were also strikes and uprisings during World War II. Now, France, of course, was taken over in 1940 by the Vichy government, which was backed by the Third Reich. So this impacted as well their colonies. They were split. Some people were for the Free France, headed by Charles de Gaulle, and others followed the Vichy government that was backed by Adolf Hitler. But people continued to fight for their national independence, and there were uprisings even during World War II in 1942 and in 1943. The war ended, of course, with the defeat of the Third Reich and later the defeat of Japan. Yet another uprising occurred in 1947, demanding independence. Now, the character of the independence movements varied. There was, of course, a nationalist movement that had erupted during the period of World War One. And in the 1920s, you had the rise of a left-leaning communist organization in Madagascar. that was allied with the Communist Party of France. This was during the 1920s. So, yes, in 1943, 1944, there were rebellions and uprisings. 1946, of course, there was a change in the French Constitution. In 1944, they held the Conference for Free France that was held in Brazzaville in the southwest region of Africa. Brazzaville, which later became the Republic of Congo, that was colonized by the French. And out of that came a new political configuration in 1946 that was known as the Fourth Republic. Now, all of this was going on within a broader context. There were African liberation movements that were surfacing all across the continent, and also liberation movements in Asia as well. Then you had the rise of the Soviet Union after the Bolshevik Revolution in 1917, then the formation of the Soviet Union. Later on, there were socialist revolutions in Korea, North Korea, and in 1948, the People's Democratic Republic of Korea was formed in the north. Then there was an invasion in 1950 uh, under the auspices of the United Nations, but it was really headed by the United States. Britain was also involved as well as Canada. In 1949, the Chinese Revolution consolidated. And in 1945, Ho Chi Minh and his political comrades formed the People's Republic of Vietnam, which was in the north. So all of these developments were taking place. The rise of national liberation movements, the advent of the socialist political and economic camp in the Soviet Union, in North Korea, in China, and eventually in Vietnam. After 1954, when the French tried to retake Vietnam, they were defeated. And then, of course, the French withdrew and turned it over to the Americans. So the Vietnamese had to fight the U.S. for another 20 years until 1975, when the U.S. Collapsed in South Vietnam and withdrew from the territory. So French colonial rule was under fire all over the world. And that is true as well of Madagascar during World War I, during World War II. Then after World War II, there was the rise of political parties, which were aimed at seeking independence from France, which did not take place until around 1960. But there was an interim period uh, during the late 1940s, during the 50s, and up until 1958, when they had the Lloyd Cadre, which was like a referendum on the future of the colonies of France. Many of them voted to remain within the French colonial system, more or less a neo-colonial system, with the exception of course, Algeria, which was fighting a war of national liberation starting in 1954, and Guinea-Conakry in West Africa, which voted against the proposal by de Gaulle in 1958. However, by 1960, many of these colonies became independent because the French realized that they did not grant independence and try to reconfigure their what became neo-colonial dominance, that it would be, of course, more struggle that could result in a total collapse of French interests and French influence in their colonies in Africa, as well as other geopolitical regions of the world. So this takes
That's
us up to
no,
the
no, no.
independence period.
Go ahead, Abayomi. Go ahead.
No, go if you have a question, yes.
Oh, well, I was just about to ask. When Madagascar became independent, was it one of peaceful transfer of power or one of violent struggle? I mean, you already mentioned Algeria.
Mhm.
That was a violent national liberation struggle, as well as Vietnam. So what was Madagascar like?
Yeah, well, I mentioned the rebellions that took place all the way from the 1890s. There were actual wars that were fought by people in Madagascar, many of whom were led by monarchies who had both men as well as women sovereigns. And that continued during World War One and World War II. And after World War II, of course, there were continuing political struggles that took place. Some of the parties were more gradualist and wanted to maintain French interests, where others wanted to break completely with France, which eventually did happen in latter years. But it was a combination of both general strikes, mass demonstrations, and rebellions that led to the independence movement being successful in Madagascar.
Fascinating. And now, so again, apologies, folks, for all of the names I'm about to butcher. Apologies for that, but here it goes. What is the socio-economic legacy of the first president of Madagascar's Philibert Cesarana, who governed from the 1st of May 1959 to the 26th of June 1960, and again from June 26, 1960 to October 11, 1972, along with his prime ministers Gabriel Ramontosa, both of the PSD, the Social Democratic Party of Madagascar, which on Wikipedia says their ideology is socialism, social democracy and democratic socialism. Political positions are left wing. They are members of Socialist International, which is where the global center left, leftists, and sometimes strongly more left leaning parties meet to see how they can advance a global left agenda, help one another out. However, the organization has been dominated by Western European and Nordic social democratic parties who have been guilty of supporting Western imperialism, being social imperialists. And since the late 70s and early 80s, many of those parties have pivoted hard to the right, domestically on their own working class, and the same is true of its sister organization, Progressive Alliance, and many of the global South, and those from the non-European and non-North American worlds often can be too influenced by this power dynamic and playbook of Western Euro-Nordic social democratic left. So what is President Philibert's socio-economic legacy, and what led to the conditions that saw his own prime minister overthrow him in a military coup, in which later he himself, Gabriel Ramontosa, was a military ruler from October the 11th, 1972 to February the 2nd, 1975, and what is his socio-economic legacy? Oh, 1 second, folks. 1 second, folks. Internet's down again. Uh-oh. One moment, folks. Come on, come on, come on, internet.
Sounds good now.
Okay, it's working out. Okay, go ahead, Abayomi. Answer.
Okay, Philbert Tsiranana is the first president of the country. Although he was the leader of the Social Democratic Party, a lot of their policies were closely allied with France, and it caused a lot of problems internally. And of course, there were other opposition parties that did not agree with his leadership. But nonetheless, he was able to rule the country from 1959, 1960, all the way up until 1972, when in fact there were mass demonstrations that developed in 1971 and 1972. And as a result of that, the country was plunged into a lot of instability, but at the same time, eventually moved in a socialist-oriented direction.
Okay, okay, that's very interesting. That's very interesting. So then let me ask. Okay, so then when the military ruler Gabriel came in, so he started to move the country in a proper left leaning anti-colonial direction. Then
Yes.
okay,
Yeah. Well, there was always left-wing, even communist organizations inside of Madagascar going all the way back to the 1920s. So even though earlier they were not dominant, but they played a key role in the strikes and the unrest that had taken place even after independence.
so before I talk about these military rulers, so then is it safe to say that when Philiberts was overthrown and President or General like Gabriel ruled, he did unleash a lot of much needed socialist policies, which did help uplift the majority Madagascar poor then.
Yes, in that direction. Although he did not stay in power over 3 years. But yes, they did try to move away from French influence and from neoliberalism. So between 1972 and 1975.
Okay, then that's a perfect segue then to this question. So then Madagascar then is ruled by back-to-back military dictators or military rulers. First, Colonel Richard Ratsiman Andrava from February the 5th, 1975 to February the 11th, 1975. And then he was murdered while in office. What were the conditions that led up to his death? And then you have General oh God, this is going to be a long episode. Giles Andre Mahozo, February the 12th, 1975 to June the 15th, 1975. And then he's followed by General Didier Ratsiraka, also of a military background. Now, before we talk about his reign, what were the socioeconomic legacies of the two military men before him?
Well, the country itself was hampered due to the legacy of French colonialism. They largely were an agricultural producing state, although they do have mineral resources, cobalt, for example, and others, but they've never been nickel, never been fully exploited by the international community. So the economy remained stagnant, and as a result of that, there was discontent, which led to many different changes of government. And until Ratsiraka, Didier Ratsiraka, came into power, and he ruled between 1975 and 1993. Now, he took a Marxist-Leninist, socialist-oriented approach to domestic as well as foreign policy. They moved closer to the Soviet Union and the socialist countries in Eastern Europe, and that was the situation that lasted there for about 18 years.
Yes, and exactly as you mentioned, then comes the rise and reign of DDA Ratsiraka, who was of a military background, 15th of June 1975 to the 30th of December 1975, and then he installed a one-party state under the Malagasy Revolutionary Party, better known as ARIMA, which is still a party that operates in the country. Now, apparently, during the period of DDA's time, the party was very much a communist party, as you mentioned, expressed support for Marxist Leninism. DDA was even influenced by North Korea and Kim Il Sung, and had open relations, one of the few countries that had open relations with the DPRK, and was very much part of the Global Communist Alliance and members of global communist parties. Wikipedia says that the ideology was social democracy since 1972. So from 1976 to 1992 was very much uh, communism, Marxist Leninist Party from 76 to 72, and the political position since then has been more or less center left since 92, and but was definitely far left from 76 to 92, and then under him, DDA had the following prime ministers, because in Madagascar it's a power sharing arrangement between presidents and prime ministers. So he had Joel Raktomala, January the 11th, 1976 to July 30th, 1976, Arima. Justin Raktonia, August the 12th, 1976 to August the 1st, 1977. Again, under Arima. Then you had Prime Minister DZA, Rona, August the 1st, 1977 until February the 12th, 1988 of the military. Victor Ramahatra, February the 12th, 1988 to August the 8th, 1991 military. And then Guy Razamanzi, August the 8th, 1991, March till March 27th, 1993. So during this period, what were their socio-economic legacies, or that credits it to DDA, when Madagascar was known during this period as the Democratic Republic of Madagascar? And by the time DDA left office on March the 27th, 1993, Madagascar then became known as the Third Republic.
Yes, and its socialist orientation, of course, dictated its domestic as well as foreign policy. Nonetheless, when the socialist camp, particularly in Eastern Europe and the Soviet Union, began to collapse, Madagascar began to have serious economic problems. So they turned to the IMF and the World Bank for financial assistance. And of course, that had problems as well because the conditionalities of the IMF and the World Bank are never beneficial for the workers, the farmers, and the youth of any particular country. So this is what happened and eventually led to Ratsiraka's departure from government, at least during this particular time period, although he did return later.
And during this period, which is actually not a short period, it's actually quite a long period in time. Although as you mentioned, it's in the final chapters though of the Cold War, where unfortunately for some of us, but fortunately for the powers to be and for liberals and for the capitalist creeps. The end of the Soviet Union, the end of communism in the Eastern European bloc. So during this period, Madagascar, whatever one wants to say about human rights abuses here and there, repression, so forth, but did Madagascar experience a civilizational upgrade during this period? And when we look at social indicators like social mobility, literacy, feminism, low child infant mortality, life expectancy. Was that, a golden age for Madagascar compared to Madagascar? Well, we're about to get to, the 1990s, but compared to everything Madagascar has experienced since that period of time under, under DDA was a golden age, more or less, for the vast majority of the working class, working poor folks of Madagascar.
Yeah, most definitely. And that would be true for other African countries as well, because of the influence of socialism on a world scale. Nonetheless, when those societies began to collapse or were overthrown by right-wing elements, then the situation reversed. The countries such as Madagascar and others, like Ethiopia, for example, uh, they had no other choice in many ways than to go to the IMF and the World Bank. The only ones that really didn't do that was, of course, the DPRK and also the Republic of Cuba, which maintained their position. Fidel Castro said socialism or death, and he really meant that. He was very serious about it, and he said, he was disappointed that the socialist countries in Eastern Europe had collapsed like a deck of cards, but they were going to continue the socialist project in Cuba, which they have done. And they've done some reforms there, but they have continued that project. So this led eventually to the departure of Didier Ratsiraka in 1993, and then there was an interim president that took over. But yes, he was there, and then in '96 he was reelected back into office. This is Ratsiraka.
Yeah. So, and of course, unfortunately, Cuba and North Korea have paid a high price for their socialism, which is an avalanche of sanctions, which is only getting worse now. So when we talk about Madagascar, so multi-party democracy, or as I like to say, multi-party democracy-ish, was implemented in Madagascar after this long period led by DDA and Arima. Madagascar was then governed by President Albert Zafi, March the 27th, 1993, until he resigned on September the 5th, 1996, and his party was the National Union for Democracy and Development, or UNDD. And interestingly enough, his prime ministers were the following. This is where it gets interesting. So you have Guy Razamanzi, March the 27th, 1993 to August the 9th, 1993, from Arima. Then you had Francique Ravoni, August the 9th, 1993 to October the 30th, 1993, Committee for Support of Democracy and Development in Madagascar. Then you had Emmanuel Rakto Vanihov, I believe, of the UNDD, October 30th, 1993 to May 28th, 1996. Then Norbert Ratsiranov, May the 28th, 1993 to September 5th, 1996, from the he was a judge from the party of Your Work Party. What are all of these men serving under Albert Zafi's socioeconomic legacy, and what led to his uh, his resignation?
Well, it was a lot of turmoil that was going on at that time, and the economy was not doing well, and there was, of course, discontent. And he only stayed in office for 3 months, for several months, excuse me, and that led to contested elections, which took place later, which brought Mark Ravalomanana to office later on.
Okay, and then as you mentioned, the acting president following President Zafi's resignation is acting president Norbert, September the 5th, 1996 to February the 9th, 1997. One moment, folks. Actually, okay, hold on. Okay, yep, internet's working again. Thank God. As I said, the acting president following President Zafi's resignation was acting President Norbert, September 5th, 1996 to February the 9th, 1997 of the party, judged by Your Work Party. So as you mentioned, not much of a socio-economic legacy, but then DDA and Arima make a political comeback, and he governs from February the 9th, 1997 to July 5th, 2002. And his prime ministers are the following. Norbert, again, of Judged by Your Work Party, which is a very right-wing party. Then Pascal Rakhtomavov of Arima, February the 21st, 1997 to July the 23rd, 1998. Then Tansly Andriy Navrov, July 23rd, 1998 to May 31st, 2002, again under Arima, and then again Arima again with Jean-Jacques Roslo Mondriab, May the 31st, 2002 to July the 5th, 2002. So under all of these men who answered to DDA, what is his socio-economic legacy during this period, during this political comeback period?
Not very good. The economy continued to stagnate, and that's why there was so much instability. There was continued protest inside the country against the various administrations that arose during the 1990s.
Well, before we talk about President Mark, that's very interesting. Why was DDA, who had ruled before, who had ruled as a communist, why was he unable to advance a socialist agenda, even if it wasn't a hardcore socialist agenda? Why wasn't he even able to advance even a modest socialist agenda, which would have helped out the majority working class, working poor, out of curiosity?
Yeah, I would think that the pressure from the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank would prohibit the implementation of domestic socialist-oriented policies. And we saw this in other states throughout Africa, even in countries where centrist parties or liberal parties were dominating, they still had to toe the line of the IMF and the World Bank. And that resulted in a reduction in public spending, in educational spending, the lowering of the value of the national currency in all of these states during the 1990s. So that would definitely prohibit countries from being implementing a socialist-oriented policies.
And do you think even if DDA do you think even if DDA would have managed to have gets a huge faction of the military, his own political party, and their mass support, do you think even if he was to try to, sort of like implement a left-wing coup and install the one-party state he had before, he would have been crushed not only financially by the IMF and the World Bank, but France itself would have intervened with its allies and just overthrow and yeah, and just launched a counter revolution against him.
Yeah, that could have been a possibility. Yes, but during those times and those circumstances, it would be very, very difficult to implement a socialist-oriented program, even in countries that were coming right out of an armed struggle. For example, the Republic of Namibia that got its independence in 1990. Now, I went there during the early 1990s, during the initial phase of independence, and they were maintaining a capitalist orientation, even though there were reforms. People were being hired in positions that they had not served in before, and there was an opening up of society in general, but they were not heading in a direction of socialism. And the same thing happened in South Africa after 1994 with the ANC coming to power. It was a similar situation there as well. So I think that holds true for other African states, including Madagascar.
Unbelievable, and that's sad but understandable. So after
Yeah,
yeah. So after DDA's term ended in Madagascar, Madagascar is then led by President Mark Ravalomanana, July 5th, 2002 to March the 17th, 2009, of the TIM party, which means, and I shit you not, it means this: I love Madagascar. And his prime minister,
yes.
his prime ministers was Jacques Silla, July 5th, 2002 to January 20th, 2002. Then an independent by the name Charles Rabi Manahara, January 20th, 2007 to March 2009, of the same party. I love Madagascar, until he was deposed in a coup on March 2009. What led to his ouster, and what can one say of his socio-economic legacy? And just a side note, the party, the TIM party, the I Love Madagascar party, according to Wikipedia, they are censored to far right, big advocates of economic liberalism, and like the Liberal Party of Australia, or one of the many political parties led by Silvio Berlusconi of Italia, like Forza Italia, and the many right-wing liberal parties of Eastern Europe and Asia. They are liberal conservatives, so big advocates of neoliberalism and very much fake populism when it comes to courting the votes of the working class. So I'm curious your response, Abayomi.
Yes, the neoliberalism intensified inside of Madagascar, and that, of course, contributed to the ongoing instability inside the country, low economic growth, the rise in poverty, and of course, the continued presence of neocolonialism, where even though people are independent, they're still impacted and dominated by the world economic system of capitalism and imperialism.
And after President Mark's time abruptly ended, the military, as you mentioned, led by Hippolyte Ramurazan, ruled for several hours until power was handed to Andre Raholina, who served from March 2009 to January 25th, 2014. And he hails from the TGV, the Party of Young Malagasy Determined. And his prime ministers were Mona Ro Ndifo of the National Movement for the Independence of Madagascar, March 2009 to October 2009. Then Eugene Mangalese he's also an independent, October 2009 to December 2009. Then Prime Minister Cecile Manho Ranta, December 2009. December 2009 to till December 20th, 2009. Then Albert Camille Vital of the military, December 20th, 2009 to November 2011. Then Omar Burzreki of the Liberal Economic and Democratic Action for National Recovery, November the 2nd, 2009 to January 25th, 2014. Now, the TGV on paper and Wikipedia is supposed to say they claim that its ideology is social democratic and political positions are center left to soft left. And on Wikipedia, it says on their page, politically, TGV states that it promotes government transparency, the development of infrastructure, and multi generational politics. It is the main center left rival of the center right TIM and currently holds a majority in the National Assembly. So, what was his and his prime minister's socioeconomic legacy during this period?
Yes, well, I think it's important to recognize that under Mark Ravalomanana, it is said that the economy grew by approximately 7% each year during his rule, but yet there was discontent inside the country, which led to the Fourth Republic, the founding of the Fourth Republic by Henry Rajano Na Piana Nana. He won the 2013 elections as a result of that. And then, of course, there was another election in 2019 in which Rajoelina won, was declared the winner with a large mandate. Now, some of these elections that took place during the 2000s had to be certified by the Madagascar Supreme Court because there was differences and disputes over who the actual winners of these elections were. So, and the one in 2009 that brought Andy Rajoelina to power, the final decision on that was brought about as a result of a Supreme Court decision. And of course, a referendum after that established the Fourth Republic that was headed by Henri Rajoelina and who won the 2013 elections.
Unbelievable. So, highly contested time. Overall, what would you say? I won't list all of the prime ministers, although he had multiple prime ministers of different, well, claiming to be independent. But what would you say was the socioeconomic legacy of President Harry and his party, the new force for Madagascar?
Obviously, it wasn't too productive. And the unrest and discontent on the part of the people continued with the high unemployment rates and other economic problems. So that's why there's been so much instability inside the country, going all the way back now for more than 20 years.
And then ultimately, he decided not to run for re-election, and his successor from the same political party, the acting president, President Revo Raktovla, who stayed in office from September the 7th, 2018 to January 19, 2019. And his prime minister was Christian Netsi, who actually served under President Harry, uh, who claims to be an independent. And uh, any socioeconomic legacy to say of this person before we have the political comeback of Andre Rahalina?
No, obviously not, because people were not satisfied with the situation inside the country. People would come out and demonstrate on a mass level. And then there was always the threat of another military intervention in Madagascar. So, yes, that is why there's been so much instability inside the country over the last 2 or more decades.
Yeah, exactly. We have a political comeback which is then mounted by President Andre Rahaliva and the TGV party with Christian Natse as prime minister, September the 19th, 2019 to September the 9th, 2023. And he then becomes acting president for 48 days, September 9, 2023 to October the 27th, 2023 with no prime minister. And then we have Richard Ravomanana comes into office and serves from October the 27th, 2023 to December the 16th, December 16th, 2023. He's an independent, but he's TGV aligned. Military background, but not a military ruler. He acts as a civilian ruler, on paper at least. And then the prime minister again is Christian Natse, who serves as prime minister October 27, 2023 to December the 16th, 2023. who remained supposedly an independent. And then, yet again, this period, known as the Fourth Republic, ends with the TGV led by President Andrei Rajoelina coming back into office with Nazi serving as prime minister December the 16th, 2023 to September 2023. And then Rufin Zafimaso, who serves as a military ruler October the 6th, 2025 to October 14th, 2025, until he is ultimately ousted in a military coup. What is the socioeconomic legacy of these presidents and prime ministers during this time? And what were the conditions that led to President Andre being ousted again in a military-backed coup?
Yes, well, that coup was considered a Gen Z coup, which you have to examine critically. It
Exactly.
was a coup organized by mainly young people who were supposed to represent the youth who were suffering from huge unemployment, a lack of educational opportunities, and that resulted in a political standoff. And of course, it led to the seizure of power by another person, Colonel Michael Randrianirina. And that
Exactly.
happened just late last year. He took over power and remains in power so far in Antananarivo, which is the capital of the Madagascar Republic.
Yes, and under him, we have the following prime ministers. We have Rufin Zafimaso, October the 14th, 2025, until October the 20th, 2025. And then Hurin Salma Rajo Rivelo, an independent, October the 20th, 2025 to October the 9th, 2026. And then Mamita Ranjo Rison, an independent, March the 15th, 2026 until the present. Uh, what are the current state of affairs and of Madagascar, and how are socioeconomic conditions under this ruler of Madagascar, who calls the government and body politics Council of the Presidents for the refoundation of the Republic of Madagascar?
Okay. Well, yes, it seems to be a better foreign policy orientation. Um, the new leader, Michael Randrianirina, says that he wants to join the Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa Plus Summit. And he has traveled to the Russian Federation and met with the president, Vladimir Putin. So it seems that as if they realize they have to move in a different direction in regard to economic policy. So the current government, the current president, says he wants to join BRICS, has expressed his interests with the Republic of South Africa President Cyril Ramaphosa, as well as the Russian Federation President Vladimir Putin. So we'll have to see what happens at the next BRICS Plus summit. Um, I'm sure they'll be invited, and whether or not they'll be eligible to join remains to be seen.
Has he talked at all about what is his socio-economic agenda, and is it safe to say he he probably is very right leaning, but recognizes that this neo-colonialism, this neoliberalism, which has been imposed on our people, isn't going to fly. We need to have some kind of socialism in order to at least have stability, so that there isn't always all of these riots, all of these strikes, and all of this shuffling around of who was the president, and of course, when that happens, there's a shuffling of prime ministers. Very curious your response.
Yeah, I think he's realizing that. Although, in terms of domestic policy, I don't see a sharp turn towards socialism or socialist orientation. But there are numerous countries around the world that want to join BRICS. And let's say one of the co-founders, for example, India, is by no means socialist oriented.
True.
They support, they seem to be allied with the United States. Uh, they're not favorable to Palestinian solidarity like other states are, for example, South Africa, China, Russia, etc. But at the same time, they're there, and I don't see India leaving the BRICS summit. And other countries that have joined as well, like Ethiopia, for example, in this period, they're not socialist oriented. Saudi Arabia is some question about whether or not they had actually joined and whether it had been approved by the government there. And the United Arab Emirates is another one. And these are U.S. allies. Now, France, the former colonial power of Madagascar, had asked a couple of years ago about joining BRICS. Now, they were turned down, um, rightfully so, but it just shows, how they're trying to infiltrate the organization and try to tear it down. They'll probably try to tear it down from inside if they're allowed to join, because France is trying to reconfigure its neo-colonial dominance in Africa. We've seen that with the holding of the so-called Africa Forward conference in Kenya earlier this year, where William Ruto, the president of Kenya, invited Emmanuel Macron to host this conference. I understand the president of Ghana was there as well. So these are bad, very, very bad moves being made because in the Sahel region in West Africa, we had the development of the Alliance of Sahel States, and they have, expelled French troops like Madagascar had decades ago during its socialist-oriented phase. But the French are still working on trying to get back in the good graces of its former colonies as well as other former British colonies. They're reaching out to develop relations with them as well. So it's not a done deal. It's still a very dangerous situation that exists in Africa. And with the Trump administration in power, they've been pressuring every single African country in regard to mineral resources, strategic metals, and also they are trying to collect data from the medical systems there. They've withdrawn from the World Health Organization and the Paris Climate Agreement. At the same time, they're trying to develop bilateral agreements with African countries related to healthcare as well as economic policy. So I think that Madagascar is in a real precarious situation at this point. Even though they want to join BRICS, economically, they still have tremendous challenges that they're going to be facing.
Well, you already sort of answered this question, but let me ask it again, which is, what was Madagascar's alliance during the Cold War? Were they more aligned with the Western imperial orbit led by, in this case, France and its allies, Brits in the US, Canada, West Germany, Belgium, Australia, New Zealand, and that NATO alliance, or more aligned with the USSR, the Eastern European Communist Bloc, Cuba, Vietnam, and again, it was very interesting to read that President Didier, during his first reign of Pharaoh, had détente with North Korea. So were they more, or were they more aligned, or were they more non-aligned? But if so, who did they lean more to when it came to the Cold War, the period of the Cold
Yeah, I would say non-aligned, leading towards the socialist camp, particularly after the early 1970s, after the change in 1972 and the tumultuous developments between 1992 and 1995. They were considered to be a part of the socialist camp, although they were a part of the non-aligned movement as well.
And you've already talked that Madagascar is open to BRICS, is in talks with BRICS, and has more or less good relations with members of BRICS, historically speaking. On top of that, what's been Madagascar's response to both AFRICOM and the anti-French wave, the African Spring, that's been happening largely in West Africa, notably again in Burkina Faso?
Yes, they would definitely be supportive based upon their history. I'm not sure in terms of the top levels of the government, but the opposition parties that are on the left and the masses of people inside the country historically have been very critical and very active against French neocolonial control and attempts to reimpose French neocolonial domination in Madagascar. So I would think they would be supportive of these developments that are going on in the Alliance of Sahel states. Um, we don't know exactly what's going to happen. There's a lot of security concerns in Mali, in Niger, as well as Burkina Faso, probably worse in Mali because of the JNIM forming an alliance with the Azawad Liberation Front, which is a Tuareg separatist movement based in the north of Mali. And there's just been a security agreement signed between Burkina Faso and Ghana under John Mahama, which is interesting as well. So we'll see what happens in terms of developments in Madagascar. It's a fairly new government, and if they join BRICS, this would open them up to receiving loans from the new development bank, which was headed by Dilma Rousseff of Brazil. So yes, it could create economic opportunities for Madagascar if they're able to join the Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa Plus summit coming up this year.
And that's very interesting. And now Madagascar is no stranger to having many parties on the left that have governed from the right. And in Madagascar, there are multiple left-leaning or soft-left parties uh, in Madagascar. So that being said, and given Madagascar was once a communist, was once a communist nation, does Madagascar then have a strong left wing movement that is mobilized, and any on the far left, given its past? And if the answer is no, then yeah, then how come? Oh, one moment, folks. Uh-oh. 1 second, folks. So, okay, hold on. The internet's coming back. Okay, we're back. Sorry about that. So, Abayomi, I don't know if you heard my. Wait, one moment again. One moment again. Sorry, folks. Sorry, folks. Okay, Abayomi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now clearly.
Okay,
And you
perfect.
said that do they have a strong left wing
Yes,
movement right now?
yes. And if the answer is no, how come? Because Madagascar, like other countries, has had they've had left wing parties, or at least parties that say they're left wing, who have
Yeah, and
governed,
governments too. Yeah.
but they've governed from the right. So given that,
Mhm.
what is the state of Madagascar's left? Do they have a strong left movement? Yeah, very curious your
Yeah,
response.
they do. Nonetheless, it's not clear what the political direction is going to be. It was the young people who rose up late last year and demanded the ouster of Rahalina. And I understand he went into exile, has not returned to the country. And of course, the new president was endorsed by the Madagascar Supreme Court. So unless some solid reforms are carried out that can improve the economic conditions of farmers, of workers, or of students and youth, creating more opportunities for them, the prospects for further instability and unrest remains. And that's what resulted in the recent change of government.
Yeah, and what role does France and Western imperialism continue to play in Madagascar? And what role does the IMF and the World Bank continue to play in the socio domestic affairs of Madagascar?
Yeah, well, the French, of course, after the unrest late last year, definitely wants to see if he can strengthen relations with the government that is there now. And that will remain to be seen as well. France has been under a lot of fire across Africa, particularly in West Africa. And as a result of that, any openings that they find, for example, in Gabon, where they had a military coup as well in 2024, uh, the new leadership in Gabon has not taken the same position as the people in Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. Chad, for example, uh, it was indicated earlier that they may ask the French troops to pull out. They did, but it's not clear exactly right now whether they're going to be asked to come back or not. So it's a matter of consistency, but Paris is working full time in efforts to reconfigure their status on the African continent, whether it's their former colonies or whether they have to seek out former British colonies, like in Kenya, for example, and also in Ghana under John Mahama. We'll have to see how things play out over the next several months inside of Madagascar.
And lastly, uh, and then lastly, even if the left, whether it be the far left communist project or social democratic left, which has made mistakes in the past or broken good promises, or talks left but governs right, these are some stark facts about this popular island nation, which tourists often flock to for the beach and to visit the distinct apes known as the lemurs. And this is all from Wikipedia.
Yes,
Madagascar is classified as a least developed country by the UN.
right.
Ecotourism and agriculture, paired with greater investments in education, health, and private enterprise, wait, private enterprise are key elements of its development strategy. Despite substantial economic growth since the early 2000s, income disparities have widened and the quality of life remains low for the majority of the population. As of 2021, 68.4% of the population was considered to be multi-dimensionally poor. Wow. So, given all of this and given the history of Madagascar, is the only solution to the plight of the majority poor and working class, working poor, and destitute and dissolute poor who face chronic unemployment, that Madagascar needs more socialism, not less socialism, more radical pan Africanist leftism, learn from the mistakes of the past, but even go back to the period of the one party left wing state. And this is the only way to radically improve its social mobility, eradicate extreme poverty, and improve life expectancy, child infant mortality, and all the other social indicators folks from affluent Western societies take for granted. And before you answer, I once saw on Vice, one should always be skeptical of Vice. But I once saw on Vice they did a documentary about Madagascar that the poverty is so widespread that they had an outbreak of the bubonic plague. So, very curious your response, Abayomi.
Yes, and I think socialism and Pan-Africanism is the ultimate solution, not just for Madagascar, but for Africa as a whole. And to your second point about the continued existence of the bubonic plague in Madagascar, that has been documented, and they are trying to attribute it to certain cultural practices that still exist inside the country. But it's not really clear to me what the real underlying causes of it are. But that's something that needs to be tackled by the new government, as well as the World Health Organization and other international bodies.
Well, I can't. Actually, anything else you want to say about Madagascar?
Oh, well, just like other African states, whether they were colonized by France, Spain, Britain, or Portugal, uh, or Belgium, they still face similar challenges. The post-colonial period, of course, has been uh, unstable, largely because of the failure of Africa to unite and to form alliances around economic and political issues. And until that is resolved, the instability will continue. Just in the last several years, there's been a reemergence of debt obligations to African states. We've seen that in Egypt, in Zambia, as well as other countries. So that's why BRICS is so important. It needs to be built up. The new development bank needs to be built up in order to have alternative forms of liquidity and loans financing for development projects. That would help immensely in pushing Africa forward in regard to economic development. But yes, it's not in isolation that Madagascar is represents part and parcel the entire African crisis that remains all the way up from the 1950s to the present period. We're talking about 70 years of national independence, 70 plus years for some countries. Yet this crisis still exists, and until Africa unites under a socialist project, these crises, these repetitive falls and rises in the economic situation will continue.
Well, I can't believe it, but folks, this is it. Our final African country, our final region of Africa, the island nations in the Indian Ocean and elsewhere, and final chapter in these history and current events, our series journey across the African continent here on 1+1, hosted by me, Youri Smouter, with Abayomi Azikiwe, journalist and historian, Pan-Africanist leftist, and lifelong anti-imperialist and Marxist and social racial eco-justice campaigner. Before we close, let me say the following. Abayomi is regularly invited on Press TV, CGTN, Global Research News Hour, Global Research.ca, Black Agenda Report, and he edits his own outlets, Pan-African Newswire, and is a regular contributor to Black Agenda Reports that offers American and international news, commentary, and analysis from a Black left perspective. Abayomi is also the author of several books as well, which folks should buy and folks should subscribe and donate generously to Black Agenda Reports and Pan-African Newswire. And if you want to do solidarity work for the African continent, I won't list all of the organizations you should join or should support money-wise, but you can do no wrong by supporting the following. The Black Alliance for Peace is one, Friends of the Congo, the Black is Back Coalition, and the African People's Socialist Party, and Black Liberation Alliance. Now, we're going to do the following. I'm going to invite Abayomi back on Friday or next Friday, but that all depends on some scheduling. But I'm hoping next Friday, Abayomi and I will have a conversation where we will talk about the series and how can Africa unite and what needs to be done to overcome their plight and what folks who are non-African can do and must do. So I will certainly invite Abayomi on in the future to this, and I will also certainly invite Abayomi on in the future to discuss any African current affairs and folks, and also just in general any topic, because I think Abayomi would have a great perspective and knowledge on. And for that, we have to do the following. I want to thank Abayomi for, wow, I think we did this well over a year ago. And apart from when I was ill or traveling, or Abayomi had important appointments that he couldn't miss, Abayomi has given us his free time nearly every Friday with no financial compensation coming from me, just to educate me and you, the audience, however small or large, giving us history lessons on each African country through a critical left-wing, post-colonial, and Marxist perspective. And for that, I want to truly thank Abayomi from the bottom of my heart for being my history teacher. History was my favorite subject throughout school, especially in high school. And doing this series, I just felt alive again. I felt just like that kid in high school whose favorite subjects were world regional studies, IB history, and peace and conflict studies. And regardless of personal problems I was plagued with, I was at my most happiest in those classes, and my grades were always good. So for that, Abayomi, I want
Thank
to
you.
thank.
You're welcome.
So for that, Abayomi, I want to thank you for again being a great history teacher, and you have taught you've taught me so much even better than the teachers I had in school, especially regarding South Africa. And are there any remarks you want to make before I close this off?
Well, thank you so much for taking the initiative for this series. And what I'm interested in doing is developing a survey book on African history. I want to work on that over the next year. And, because all of this required rereading and also doing research into new findings related to African history, culture, scientific developments, and so forth. So, yes, Madagascar, I think, was a good closure. They have 31 million people who live there, but it has the same struggles that countries throughout the African continent have. And also focusing on the Indian Ocean island nations as well was very important because in the public mind, a lot of people don't associate these island nations as being part of the continent, which they are. Madagascar is part of the Southern African Development Community, which unites the southern region of Africa, the subcontinent, as well as the African Union. So this is very, very important that this has been reviewed over the last year.
And I look forward to getting all of your books in the future.
Okay.
And we well I'm working on a thank you gift for you, but I won't tell you what it is. And
Okay, then. Thank you.
but really do look forward to your new book project, and you'll have to definitely come back on the show to do that. And
Right.
I'll also have you back sometime in February because that's Black History Month to talk about
In the States, yeah, right.
yeah, and there are historical figures that I want to explore with you, historical events, whether it was the Rodney King uprisings, the horrific murder of Amadou Diallo, which I would love to talk about with you, and even commemorating Russian history, which I would love to have on with both you and John Jeter. So you will continue to be a regular on the 1+1. And
Much appreciated.
yes, and as always, folks, donate to 1+1 if you can at PayPal. If you want to donate in another way, then get in touch with me at yurismouder at gmail.com. And remember to please share widely. It's the only way to overcome the far right algorithms and the monopoly corporate media and Western state media have in the social media world by sharing our stuff and and to support us. And don't forget to help my colleague Chris Richards, the eclectic radical. Join him on Patreon, his Substack. Check out and share his content on YouTube because he's facing unemployment and needs help. And if you help him out, you're helping me out. There's lots and lots of projects I would love to do outside of Belgium, but I need folks to donate so I can do that and be able to travel and maybe even do on the ground journalism. And before we also close, I dedicate this series to Candida, who sadly passed away early when this series started. She was a fan of 1+1. She was a left-leaning Black American nationalist, and may she rest in peace. And I dedicate this entire series to those leftists in Africa who fight the long, constant struggle for true revolutionary socialist justice and don't throw any marginalized people under the bus, and those who stand by them through solidarity work and learning from them and reporting their truth and myth busting to the world. And final dedication is, of course, the team at Black Agenda Reports, Black Alliance for Peace, Your World News, led by Solomon Kamajan, who is one of the best friends, not just 1+1, but to Africa Solidarity. Those who are involved in Haiti solidarity, West Asian, Eastern European, and global solidarity and anti-imperialism. And we have to thank, of course, Canadian historian, NGO critic, media critic, anti-imperialist thinker, left-wing campaigner, Eve Englert, the best president the NDP never had. And Eve, who is the incredible founder and member of the Canadian Foreign Policy Institute, Talking Foreign Policy, the Canadian Foreign Policy Hour, and is a member of Capitalism Can't Be Fixed and Disruption Canada. I highly, highly recommend people get his book, Canada in Africa, 300 Years of Aid and Exploitation. And on that note, good night and good luck, folks. Have a great weekend and join us possibly for the next 2 Fridays for an overview on Africa and us celebrating the life and continued work of Abayomi. All my best until then. Good night and good luck.